So now, mic check, to the controversial ending a lot of people have been talking about. Hey guys, welcome to Back with Better Studios. My name is Adeshawa, and today we are going to review Old Guard Part 2. This is one movie I have been anticipating for. I couldn't wait to watch. I even went to watch part 1 so I could just relive the moment and enter into part 2. It was that serious. So you all know that the part 1 was released in 2020, and 5 years later we have part 2, and the story takes us through Andy and the team still saving humanity with new friends and foes. Starring Charlize Theron, Kiki Lane, Chiwetel Ejiofor, Marwan Kenzari, and others. Directed by Victoria Mahoney. So the story of Old Guard 2. I will say that the story is good, and I know that some people might have one or two things to talk about here and there, but for me, the story is good. I like that the story for this part 2 carries the emotional weight of the franchise to an extent. It's becoming a franchise, so yeah, it carries the weight of the emotions. We saw deeper, we felt deeper into their emotions. It was not like the fight, we are here to conquer the world, we are the heroes and all of that for part 1. Also for part 2, that also, showed, but we got deeper into their emotions, into their fears, into their resentment, into their forgiveness, their acceptance and all of that. So I really like that, and I like the introduction of new cast, how their story was brought into this part 2, how we realize that, oh, these people, they are not as new as we thought. So I really also like that. So yeah, good story. So to the actors' performances, this section does not even need to be too long because the actors in this movie did an amazing job. I love every one of them performances. Like every one of them, the good ones, the bad people in this movie, their performances were just giving me joy. I was really happy. I was satisfied with their performances. Talk about Charlie's, talk about Veronica, Henry, Kiki, Matthias, all of them, Uma, everybody, the new one, the old cast, everybody gave us a good performance. And I just want to quickly talk about Joe. His character is played by Marwan Kenzari. Joe in part 1 is this, outspoken person, is this character that gives clapbacks, comments to people. You do not mess with his team members at all. But in part 2, he was, a bit reserved, and he was just like taking us through his emotions. That is just, afraid. He has this fear of what is going to happen, this kind of new kind of enemy that they have, that they're not even sure of this kind of enemy. Like, this enemy is quite different from any other kind of person they've encountered, and yeah, so on and so forth. So another character I want to talk about is Nile. I love the character development in Nile. You can see the confidence and even the healing also. You see that she heals like instantly now, and I liked how the camera like showed us that angle of her neck where she just had a cut and immediately it was closing up. I was like, okay, this is a character development that I really like. The Nile of last 6 months is not a Nile now. She is an upgrade for real in every aspect of things. So good performances by every actor on this project. So I'm going to talk about the things I liked in part 1 that also continued in that way, or in that same path in part 2, making me even like part 2 the more. And also some things that stood out for me in part 2. The first is the things I like in part 1 and part 2. So I'm going to start from that angle. The first is the directing. I like the directing of this part 2. Part 1 was directed by Gina Prince by The Wood. She's one of my best international directors. I love her so much. And she did an amazing job in part one. And funny thing is, I didn't know she was not the director for part two until I started watching the end credit. I was like, wow, really? So I had to go and just, do a little bit of research on Victoria Mahoney, and she did an amazing job. She did an awesome job with part two. For me, I won't say that they direct alike because this is my first movie of Victoria Mahoney, but I would say that it's like they think maybe in the same direction, because there's part one has this smoothness and seamlessness to it, with how things were done, with the perspective of the characters. Part two also had, that smoothness. There's just one thing soothing about, the way the characters were, the angle of things, how everything was just put together. So I saw that smoothness in part one in the directing. I saw that smoothness also in part two in the directing. Beautiful women with very beautiful minds, right? Interesting, talented women. Shout out to both of them. So I'm going to talk about the cinematography for part one and part two. The director of photography was Barry Ackroyd, and I was like, wow, wow. So part one was something I liked, with the camera angles, with the camera movements, and the same thing happened also in part two. The camera movement, the camera angles, the cinematography, like picture quality, everything was just amazing to me. I really liked it, and he just did a very good job with that. So the combat scene is another thing I'm going to talk about for the part one and the part two. So there's this Trinity concept I have of Old Guard. It's the combination of the director, the cinematography, and the combat. Those three things for me made this movie what it is. If it gave it this, I don't know if anybody's seen this smooth, seamless thing with this movie, this easy paced, way of things with this movie. So one thing about action movie is synonymous with fast paced, things, fast paced running, fast paced action, combat, and all of that. But this is not so fast paced, and I like that. It makes you to be immersed in the fighting, it makes you to be immersed in the punch that is coming, in the kicks that is coming, in the shooting that is coming, and all of that. So I really like, how it was, because if you're immersed in it, then you get the feel of everything, and you're satisfied with the fight scene you are watching on your screen. So shout out to the director, to the cinematographers, to the fight coordinators. Everybody on this team did an amazing job. So this Trinity, give them their flowers, please. Thank you. Another thing I like about part two is that I like that the beginning, I just keep talking about this beginning, maybe because I just like it. The beginning of part two was a very good continuation for the end of part one. I hope I'm not confusing you guys at all. The first scene in part two had me, loving how the part two started. It was a very good anchor to how the part two started. So like us seeing that scene, you're going to just sit your butt down and want to watch what is going to happen. So that's what I mean. So yeah, good beginning to the end of the part one. A good beginning of part two to the end of the part one. Things that stood out for me, the first is the scene where Andy met Queen after 500 years. That scene, I call the scene the time travel scene. The directing, the VFX, the actors' performances, everything was just excellent. I watched some BTS slash prep activities video on Victoria Mahoney's page on Instagram, and when I watched those clips, I appreciated that scene more, so you can go and watch those videos I'm talking about. So next is a moment in a scene in part 1 that was not so significant, but when we got to part 2, that little moment that we just looked over, oh, it's just there, became so significant that it was the game changer of the entire story. I'm like, what? I like what you guys did with that. I was just like, oh, something this simple is like so big in part 2. So yeah, kudos to the brain or brains behind the idea. So now, mic check, mic check. To the controversial ending a lot of people have been talking about. Honestly, I wasn't so pleased with the ending also. As much as I think they want us to thirst for more, but it was just the it was just the like it was not it for me. I didn't just like the feeling I had when I watched the last scene. It's just like I was just trying to check my phone. Are you sure this film? Are you sure the ending is not ID somewhere else? Because I don't understand it. That's how it was. It's because like when you finish drinking a juice in a carton and you're just trying to like still pour the remaining in your tongue, that are you sure this thing is not remaining? That's how I felt when I watched the end of this movie. So to an extent, maybe if there was an epilogue, maybe that would have made it up for us, after the few end credits. You know how Marvel Studios does their thing with like an epilogue after some end credits. Maybe that would have just made it up for us, but it ending just like that, I'm like, oh wow. And the funny thing is, this might take like another 5 years before we see the part 3. I'm like, wow. I really don't know. Maybe if it was a case where, oh, they say, oh, part 2 is released this month, which is July, and let's say December 2025 we're going to release the part 3, or they say, oh, February 2026 we're going to release the uh the part 3. At least that was done for Squid Game, right? So I felt I might have, felt better that okay, there's hope for us. But even this part 2 self, it took you guys 5 years. Now, part 3, God knows when, though. Everything is going to be alright. But that's just how I felt. I just felt that, oh, that I just wanted more. As much as it was us thirsting for it, but what we even had did not even satisfy us as much. That's just how it was. But yeah, it is what it is, right? Old Guard Part 2 was a good watch, but it's just that after watching the movie, it felt like a bridge between part 1 and part 3, which, yeah, that's just what I'm just going to say. I enjoyed watching Old Guard too, but that's just my honest review for the ending part. It just felt like it was a tie between the part 1 and the part 3. So yeah, but are you going to enjoy it? Yes. So guys, this is my review for Old Guard Part 2. It is available on Netflix, so you can go and watch there. My name is Adeshewa, and I'm going to see you in my next review. Bye bye.